Today, I'll share an unbelievable story about a wife's betrayal that took an unexpected turn. Love shocking stories and real-life drama? Then subscribe, hit like, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out. Let's get started. Lara strode purposefully across the polished marble lobby of Cygnus International, her heels echoing sharply with each determined step. As a senior account executive at the prestigious marketing firm, Lara was used to turning heads with both her stunning looks and razor-sharp intellect. With her sleek blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a figure that could stop traffic even in her professional attire, the 35-year-old was the object of envy and desire throughout the company. But Lara only had eyes for one man, her dashing coworker Alec. Alec had transferred to the New York office from London 6 months ago to spearhead a major campaign. From the moment they met, electricity crackled in the air between them. After a few charged encounters, flirtatious texts and stolen glances, they began a passionate affair, meeting up in hotels whenever they could slip away. Lara knew it was wrong, she was a married woman after all. But there was something about Alec's charismatic charm, the way he challenged her, and how he made her feel vivacious and exhilarated in a way she hadn't felt in years. Being with him was like an intoxicating escape from reality. As she settled into her office with a view of the shimmering Hudson River, Lara's thoughts drifted to the thrilling rendezvous scheduled with Alec that very afternoon. Her phone pinged with an incoming message and her pulse quickened, expecting it to be from him. But the text was from her husband David, working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Lara exhaled, secretly relieved by the development. It would allow her and Alec a few extra uninterrupted hours together this evening. She quickly tapped out a reply to her husband, "Of course, no worries. I have a long night ahead too. See you when I see you." Lara leaned back in her leather chair and smiled slightly, feeling a thrill run through her at this newfound sense of freedom and control. She was a confident, driven career woman and now she felt empowered in her personal life too. Alec made her feel young, *XY, desired. What she had with him was separate from her life with David. She was sure she could continue managing their affair without her husband ever being the wiser. As morning melted into afternoon, Lara sailed through meetings and calls, her anticipation building for her imminent meeting with Alec. When the hour finally arrived, she breezed by the conference room where Alec was chatting with some colleagues and shot him a meaningful look. He nodded almost imperceptibly, his eyes gleaming with the same eager energy. 20 minutes later, Alec slipped into the private room they often used for their intimate lunches and exchange of confidential documents. The sexual tension was palpable as Alec closed and locked the door behind him. Lara leaned suggestively on the edge of the table, blazer doffed to reveal a silky, low-cut emerald blouse that perfectly accentuated her gym-toned figure. "You late," she chastised playfully, eyes smoldering. "Apologies," Alec replied smoothly as he loosened his tie and closed the distance between them. "Had to wrap up that dreadful planning session. But I am all yours now." Lara reached up to wrap her arms around his neck as their lips met in a hungry, urgent kiss. The magnetic pull between them had only intensified over the months. The taboo nature of their relationship, the sneaking around, the forbidden element, it was all wildly arousing. Alec's hands roamed to Lara's hips and he hiked her skirt up as he lifted her onto the table, scattering some papers. She locked her legs around him as he pushed her blouse off her shoulders and his mouth journeyed down to her throat and collarbone. Lara gasped at the contact, already losing herself in pure sensation. "God, you drive me wild," Alec growled lowly between heated kisses. "I can't get enough of you. I've been craving you all day," Lara purred as she worked at the buttons of his dress shirt. "We have a bit more time today. David is working late again." As their passionate encounter escalated across town, David was not in fact staying late at his office. He eased his Mercedes Roadster into the discreet underground parking garage of a luxury apartment building in Tribeca. With a quick glance around to ensure he wasn't seen, David grabbed his gym bag and leather briefcase from the trunk and took a private elevator up to the 9th floor. When the doors slid open, he strode into an immaculate loft apartment with panoramic city views through floor-to-ceiling windows. A beautiful redhead in her late 20s emerged from the kitchen with a cocktail in hand. "You home early," she grinned as she slinked over and greeted David with a deep, sensual kiss. I told Lara I had to work late again, David replied when they broke apart. He casually shrugged off his suit jacket, revealing his fit, compact frame. Couldn't he wait to see you, Violet? Violet set her drink down and started to seductively unbutton David's shirt. Well, they've been waiting for you all day, darling. I want you, now, she purred. Patience, my dear, David chided amusedly, catching her hands. His tone was light but his eyes had a cool, assertive gleam. Work and pleasure first, then we can play. Violet pouted but obeyed, fixing David a scotch as he set up his laptop on the desk and kicked his feet up. Another profitable quarter, he smirked with satisfaction as he transferred some funds and reviewed investment charts. The truth was, David knew exactly what Lara was up to. He was not the naive, workaholic husband she thought him to be. In fact, he had long known about her indiscretions with Alec. But he had his own carnal affair with Violet, their downstairs neighbor. And he was using knowledge of Lara's infidelity to conduct some clandestine financial dealings right under her nose. Cool as a cucumber, David continued the charade of working late while he moved assets around to hidden offshore accounts only he knew about. Lara's dalliances with Alec served as a convenient smokescreen for him, allowing David to spend more time tending to his extracurricular activities, both in the bedroom with Violet and with their bank accounts. Lara had no idea, but her cheating was the key to allowing David to operate in the shadows. David leaned back, savoring the rich burn of the expensive scotch and plotting his next moves. He glanced over at Violet, who was draped alluringly over the plush white sofa, all long legs and curves poured into scanty black lace. She was an ex-model and aspiring actress he had installed in the apartment downstairs. Utterly devoted to David, she believed he would eventually leave Lara and make Violet his one and only. Silly girl, David thought smugly. She was a delightful diversion but temporary, just like Lara and Alec. For now, he would maintain the veneer of a busy, boring husband, encouraging Lara to carry on with her sordid little affair. Let her think she is being so clever, getting away with her secret trysts while he toiled away obliviously. All the while, he'd be 3 steps ahead, turning her transgressions to his advantage. The web of secrets and illicit activities grew more tangled by the day. Lara truly thought she could keep her affair with Alec perfectly compartmentalized. But what she didn't yet realize was that her husband David was a master player in this game. And he had a few more tricks up his sleeve that she would never see coming. The question wasn't whether Lara would unravel the truth, it was how long David would let her go on believing her own lies. With a final keystroke, David finalized another transfer and closed his laptop with a satisfied snap. Rising from his chair, he grabbed the scotch tumbler and made his way over to Violet with a wolfish smile. Now then, where were we? He asked devilishly, pulling her up into his arms. Across town, Lara and Alec lay entangled and spent in the private conference room, basking in the afterglow of their tryst, completely unaware that her husband David wasn't just wise to her cheating, but 3 steps ahead in a far more insidious game of deceit. The tangled web of secrets had only just begun to unspool. A week later, Lara was in her private office reviewing marketing projections when Alec slipped in and locked the door behind him. He looked tense and preoccupied as he walked over and perched on the edge of her desk. We need to be more careful, Alec said in a low, serious tone that Lara wasn't accustomed to hearing from him. I think people are starting to suspect something is going on between us. Lara set down her pen and frowned slightly. What makes you say that? I thought we were being discreet. It's the little things, Alec sighed, rubbing his chiseled jaw. The looks, the whispers. Angela from accounting saw us coming out of the storage closet together last week. What? I thought you said no one saw us. Lara exclaimed, feeling anxiety bubble up. This was the first crack in the veneer of her perfectly compartmentalized affair. I didn't think anyone did, Alec replied tensely. But apparently Angela saw. She made some snide comment to me in the break room about how you and I have been logging a lot of inventory checks together. Lara groaned and massaged her temples. She couldn't afford for word of their relationship to spread around the office. Her mind began to frantically scheme up damage control measures. Okay, we lay low for a while, Lara said decisively. Keep things strictly professional at work. No more secret rendezvous in the office. But I don't want to stop seeing you, Alec protested, reaching for her hand. Lara squeezed his hand reassuringly. We want to stop. We just need to be smarter about it. Outside of work only. We can get a room at the Park Hyatt this weekend? Alec's expression softened and he nodded. I'll make it happen. I'll do whatever it takes to protect what we have. Lara leaned in and kissed him, ignoring the niggling sense of unease unfurling in her stomach. She was the one in control, she told herself firmly. She could handle this. That confidence began to erode by inches over the next few weeks. It started with sideways glances from coworkers when she and Alec were huddled together over proofs in the graphics department, hushed tones that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. Lara felt the gossip mill churning around her, the subtle shift in how she was perceived. Her uneasiness only compounded when their biggest client, an upscale fitness brand, abruptly moved their business to a competitor. Lara was stunned. They had a rock-solid relationship and the campaign pitches had been met with rave response. It didn't make sense. Doubts crept in like insidious tendrils as Lara began to question her usually sound business judgment. Had she been so preoccupied with her affair that she was slipping at work? The last thing she needed was their illicit relationship negatively impacting her career. Even so, she couldn't bring herself to end things with Alec. If anything, Lara began to lean on their affair even more as an escape from the stress and uncertainty festering in her professional life. She arranged more and more frequent rendezvous outside the office, upscale hotels where they could forget about everything except each other for a few passionate hours. Alec remained tender and attentive, a port in the growing storm. But there was a guardedness to him now too, a reservation simmering behind his pale blue eyes that Lara couldn't quite deconstruct. Sometimes she caught him studying her with an unreadable expression, as if trying to peer past her facades. Meanwhile, David was keeping his own set of secrets close to the vest. He managed to secure an insider trading tip from his old college buddy Carter, now a hedge fund manager. It was the kind of transaction that could make them a tidy sum, if handled carefully through some backdoor channels. David began spending even more late nights allegedly at the office, but Violet knew otherwise. She was increasingly restless, craving more of his funds and attention. When they were together, she worked hard to impress and please him, but she was growing frustrated at being the covert other woman. When are you going to leave her? Violet pouted one evening, crawling into David's lap and winding her arms around his neck. I am tired of being your dirty little secret. David took a slow sip of his scotch, eyeing her placidly over the crystal rim. Patience, he intoned, as he always did. These things take time. I am working on securing our future. So you keep saying, Violet huffed, tossing her long auburn hair. But I don't want to be patient anymore. I want you, all of you. David set his tumbler down deliberately and shifted her off his lap so he could rise to his feet, deftly adjusting his cufflinks. And you'll have me, he promised. When the time is right. But for now, you know our arrangement. Violet glared at his retreating back as David strode into the bedroom, the conversation clearly over. In a fit of pique, she picked up his phone from the end table and punched in his passcode, his anniversary with Lara, so predictable. Violet froze when the phone unlocked to reveal not Lara's contact information, but a long call logged to a number she didn't recognize. Her stomach plummeted as she scanned the list of cryptic texts about transactions and untraceable. This didn't sound like communication with his wife. This sounded like David was involved in something else entirely. With a shaking hand, Violet set the phone down and took a gulp of David's abandoned scotch. Clearly, her lover boy was a man of even more secrets than she realized. And she had a creeping feeling that this particular skeleton in David's well-dressed closet was going to blow up in all of their faces. When David emerged from the bedroom, Violet was perched casually on the couch, examining her flawless scarlet manicure. I've been thinking, she announced calmly. You rewrite. I've been too impatient. I am happy with our arrangement. For now. David cocked an eyebrow, sensing an undercurrent to her words. But he simply nodded slowly and collected his phone and briefcase. Glad you come around to see things my way. I have to head out. Business to attend to. Of course, Violet replied blithely. Your work is so important. I understand. But as the door clicked shut behind him, Violet reached for the burner phone deliberately tucked beneath the couch cushion. With quick, determined taps, she typed out a text. Emergency. We need to meet. Things just got a lot more complicated with the usual spot, 30 minutes. Across town. Alec glanced down at the incoming text alert, his jaw clenching almost imperceptibly. He was at the Park Hyatt, waiting at the hotel bar for Lara to join him for another secret tryst. This was the last thing he needed right now. Quickly, he tapped out a response. Can't get away. Meet tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pocketing the burner phone, Alec took a deep steadying breath and tried to rearrange his features into a lover-like countenance as Lara breezed through the lobby, looking perfectly put together as always. But the stress was starting to show around the edges in the purplish smudges beneath her eyes, expertly concealed but still apparent to him. This affair was taking its toll on her too. As Lara spotted him and made her way over, all dazzling white teeth and Chanel No. 5, Alec felt a twist of guilt in his gut. If she knew the extent of the secrets he was keeping, it would destroy her. He should end things, now, before it all spiraled even further out of control. It was the right thing to do. But then Lara was sliding onto the bar stool next to him, her hand warm on his thigh as she signaled the bartender for her usual dirty Kettle One martini. And just like that, Alec's resolve crumbled. He wanted her too much, needed her too deeply. He was in too far to turn back now. When her drink arrived, Lara raised it to clink against Alec's rocks glass of Macallan. To us, she smiled, her eyes sparkling in the muted lighting. To what we have together. To us, Alec echoed hollowly, the words tasting like deceit on his tongue. Unbeknownst to Alec, across the bar, a striking blonde in a black trench coat and oversized sunglasses was watching their every move. Slowly, deliberately, she angled her phone and snapped a series of photos of the two cheaters, leaning in close, hands intertwined. Photographic evidence of their indiscretion. Satisfied, the woman threw a few bills on the bar and strode out, already drafting a text as her Louboutins clicked across the parquet floor. Got the money shot. Sending now. A tangled web, indeed. And things were about to get a lot more sticky. We have a problem. David looked up from his laptop to see Violet standing in the doorway, her lithe body wound tight with tension. She tossed a manila envelope onto his desk, her gaze sharp and accusatory. Frowning, David reached for the envelope and slid out the contents 8x10 glossy photos of Lara and Alec, locked in a passionate embrace at the Park Hyatt bar. Their affair, in vivid photographic detail. Your wife's whoring around on you and you don't even care, Violet spat venomously. What kind of man are you? David slowly slid the photos back into the envelope, his expression unreadable. When he finally looked up at Violet, his eyes were cold and assessing. I am the kind of man who doesn't like surprises, he said evenly. How did you get these? Violet crossed her arms defiantly. I hired a private investigator. I was sick of being your dirty secret while your wife flaunted her boy toy all over town. David rose slowly from his chair, circling around the desk until he was standing directly in front of Violet. She held her ground, even as he loomed over her, using his height to intimidate. Let me make one thing crystal clear, David said softly, dangerously. You do not make decisions or take actions regarding my wife. Ever. That is not your place. Violet tossed her head, eyes flashing. I just thought you should know the truth about what a lying slut you remarried to. Quick as a snake, David's hand shot out and grabbed Violet's throat, slamming her back against the wall. She let out a shocked, choked gasp, scrabbling at his hand as he squeezed. Insult Lara again, and it will be the last thing you ever say, David warned with quiet menace. You are a toy, an amusement. You do not get to question me or interfere in my affairs. Nod if you understand. Eyes wide and watering, Violet managed a jerky nod. Satisfied, David released her and she slumped against the wall, coughing and massaging her throat. There's my good girl, David purred, stroking her hair as she shrank back from him. Now, I have business to attend to, so run along and powder your nose. I'll deal with you later. Thoroughly cowed, Violet slunk out of the study without another word. Once he was alone, David slid the envelope of photos into his wall safe and spun the combination lock. He would dispose of them later, but for now, they made good insurance. He knew all about Violet's little plot with the private eye. Just like he knew she had found the texts on his phone and hired the Plea to trail him too. Amateur. David was always 5 steps ahead. He had allowed her to find those breadcrumbs, let her think she was unraveling his secrets. Keep your enemies close and your unstable mistresses closer. Violet was becoming a liability. He would need to end things with her soon, get her out of the picture. But first, he needed to take care of the other little mess she had uncovered. Time to send a message loud and clear to Lara and her lover boy. No one double-crossed David Gallagher and escaped unscathed. Across town, Lara was just pulling into the underground parking garage of her apartment building after another draining day at the office. The client losses were piling up, her accounts slipping through her fingers like sand through a sieve. The pressure was immense. And then there were the knowing looks and whispers from her colleagues, the subtle digs about her partnership with Alec. The stress of trying to keep their affair under wraps was wearing her down to a raw nerve. Lara leaned her forehead against the steering wheel and took a deep, shuddering breath. She was so tired of the pretending, the hiding, the constant thrumming anxiety. She loved Alec, but she was starting to wonder if it was worth all this. The price was becoming too high. Lost in her thoughts, Lara didn't notice the dark figure approaching her car until it was too late. Her driver's side door was wrenched open and she let out a startled scream as rough hands dragged her out and slammed her face first against the vehicle. "Lara Gallagher, you've been a very naughty girl," a low voice growled in her ear. She thrashed against her attacker's hold, her cheek scraping painfully against the cool metal. Suddenly she was spun around and shoved back against the car, giving her a glimpse of her assailant. He was tall and muscular, wearing a black ski mask, but it was his eyes that made her blood run cold, flat and lifeless, like a shark's. "Your husband is very displeased with your behavior," the man informed her, emotionless. "Consider this a warning. End the affair. Or next time, I won't be so gentle." With that, he released her and melted back into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. Lara slid down the side of her car, gulping for air as shock and adrenaline coursed through her system. With a shaking hand, she pulled out her phone and dialed Alec. He answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting for her call. "Alec," Lara choked out, her voice trembling. "He knows. David knows about us. What happened? Are you okay?" Alec demanded, alarm coloring his tone. Stumbling over her words, Lara relayed the parking garage encounter, feeling numb and disoriented. This couldn't be happening. How had everything spiraled so far out of control? There was a weighty pause on the other end of the line after she finished recounting her harrowing tale. When Alec finally spoke, his voice was leaden. "Lara, there's something you need to know," he said grimly. "It's about your husband. He's into some really bad stuff." Lara listened in growing horror as Alec laid out the extent of David's secrets, the insider trading, the offshore accounts, the dark web deals. It was worse than she ever could have imagined. Her perfect, buttoned-up, boring husband was a wolf in sheep's clothing. "I suspected for a while, but I didn't know how to tell you," Alec admitted, sounding anguished. "I thought I was protecting you. But now, we have to go to the authorities," Lara interrupted decisively, clarity crystallizing through the fog of shock. "David is dangerous. We can't let him get away with this. With any of it." "Lara, think about what you're saying," Alec argued. "Exposing David means our affair becomes public knowledge. Are you ready for that fallout?" Lara closed her eyes, a single tear streaking down her cheek as she accepted the bitter truth. Her marriage was over, one way or the other. It was time to stop running from her mistakes and face the consequences. "Meet me at our place in an hour. And Alec, bring any evidence you have against David. It's time to come clean and end this, once and for all." Across town, David was meeting with his hacker contact Miles, outlining a delicate job. "I need you to make some documents disappear," David instructed cryptically. "Corporate financials, a few electronic trails linking certain transactions. Can you handle that? For the right price, I can erase anything," Miles smirked, cracking his knuckles. "But this isn't my first rodeo, Mr. G. I know you, in deep. Messing with other people's billions is dangerous business." David's eyes narrowed to slits. "I am not paying you to dispense advice. Stick to deleting the files I tell you to. The rest doesn't concern you." Miles shrugged and spun back to his array of blinking computer screens. Whatever you say, boss. I'll get started erasing your dirty laundry. Any other skeletons need burying? A muscle ticked in David's jaw. The secret accounts, the insider trades, the multitude of sins. It was all unraveling faster than he could patch the holes. The authorities were closing in. But there was still one devastating weapon left in his arsenal. One final play that could deliver the killing blow to the two thorns in his side. His treacherous wife and her meddling lover. If he was going down, he was taking them with him. David felt the cold weight of the gun tucked into his waistband. It was time to end this cat and mouse game, once and for all. Time to take care of Lara and Alec, permanently. The Ritz-Carlton hotel room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn against the neon-studded Manhattan night. Lara paced the plush carpet anxiously, her heels discarded, emotionally and physically exhausted. Alec sat on the edge of the bed in his shirt sleeves, head in his hands. A thick folder lay on the duvet next to him, the culmination of his covert investigation into David's illicit activities. Bank statements, phony transactions, a transnational web of dark money and deceit. I think that's everything, Alec said hoarsely, finally looking up at Lara. Enough to bury David and his cronies for good. But Lara, are you sure you want to do this? Taking this to the feds, it will destroy him. Lara paused in her pacing and met Alec's gaze, her blue eyes crystalline with unshed tears and steely resolve. He destroyed us first, she said softly, her voice brittle. The man I thought I knew, the man I married, he's a stranger. And a criminal. She walked over and sank down next to Alec, lacing her fingers through his. I know I should have ended things between us a long time ago. And I'll have to face those consequences. But I am done living a lie. It's time to come clean. About everything. Alec squeezed her fingers, feeling the weight of their forbidden history, the love and the loss. Are you sure you want to leave him? For good? Lara leaned her head on his shoulder, suddenly feeling 1,000 years old. I am not the same person I was when I said, I do. And neither is David. There's no saving what we had. It's time to salvage what's left of my integrity. Even if it means watching my whole world burn. They sat in heavy, aching silence for a long moment, the folder between them the dynamite that was about to blow their lives apart. Finally, Lara reached for her phone. With a deep breath, she dialed a number from memory. Evan? It's Lara. I need your help. And your discretion as my attorney. An hour later, Lara and Alec emerged from the hotel room, the precious folder clutched in her Birkin bag. They strode across the gleaming lobby with purpose, the weight of their decision settling on their shoulders. They were so focused on their mission that they didn't notice the hooded figure tracking their every move from behind a New York Times. As they climbed into a waiting Uber, the man folded his paper deliberately and picked up his phone. They on the move, he muttered. Just left the Ritz, looks like they headed downtown. You want me to follow? No need, came David's smooth reply. I know exactly where they going. It's time to end this little game of cat and mouse. Across town, David sat in the shadowed backseat of the Mercedes, watching the entrance of the One Police Plaza, the NYPD's imposing headquarters. His hand caressed the cool metal of the silencer-tipped Ruger in his lap as he waited for Lara and her lover to walk into his trap. They thought they could outsmart him, outplay him. Amateurs. David had been 3 steps ahead of them this entire time, watching as they scurried about, so confident in their little scheme. Truthfully, David didn't care about the money laundering, the insider trading, any of it. He had squirreled away more than enough in his Cayman accounts to disappear and live like a king. No, this was about principle. About punishing those who had betrayed him. Lara, his faithless wife. Alec, her self-righteous lapdog. And Violet, the wild card he had so foolishly trusted. One by one, he would make them pay for ever daring to cross him. As if on cue, Violet suddenly materialized out of the evening crowd, her red hair tucked under a slouchy beanie. David watched through narrowed eyes as she nervously scanned the plaza before ducking into an alley across from 1PP. So, the scared little mouse had found her courage after all. Too bad it was too little, too late. David had already arranged for one of his FBI contacts to intercept Lara and Alec the second they set foot inside the lobby. There would be no noble unburdening of sins tonight. Just a tidy capture and a long, unpleasant interrogation for his loose-lipped associates. David felt his phone buzz and glanced down at the incoming text from his Fed. On approach now. We'll take them in the lobby. Stand by. Violet's involvement complicated things, but no matter. Once Lara, Alec and their incriminating little folder were in custody, David would deal with her too. Perhaps a visit from his friend in the ski mask was in order, to remind her of her place. Flicking off the safety of his pistol, David rolled down the window and took careful aim at the alley where Violet lurked. One muffled pop and it would all be over. He could almost taste the coppery tang of blood, feel the kick of the gun. Suddenly, the night exploded with a cacophony of sirens, the screech of tires, the stampede of boots. David barely had time to register the tsunami of police cruisers and SWAT vehicles surrounding his car before his driver's side door was wrenched open. David Gallagher. A swarm of NYPD officers advanced on him, weapons drawn. Drop your weapon and show me your hands. Now. Shell-shocked, David complied robotically, his mind spinning. How had it all gone so catastrophically wrong? As the cops dragged him out of the car and slammed him face first onto the hood, yanking his arms behind his back, the pieces fell into sickening place. Violet, that conniving Judas. She had set him up. Led him here like a lamb to slaughter, while Lara and Alec served up his sins to the FBI on a silver platter. Numb with seething rage, David barely heard the detective rattling off his Miranda rights as he wrenched his gaze up to see Lara and Alec emerging from the precinct, flanked by his own shady Fed. The bastard had been in on it too. They had played David at his own game. And won. White-hot fury propelled David into motion. He lunged against the cuffs, straining toward the traitorous trio. You think this is over? He snarled, spittle flying. You just signed your death warrant. I'll destroy you all. You dead. Yeah, tell it to the judge. The cop wrestled him into the backseat of the squad car. David Gallagher, you are under arrest. As the door slammed shut, David caught one last glimpse of Lara's ashen, devastated face. Their eyes met through the chaos, a lifetime of love and lies passing between them. Then the cruiser peeled away, the last tether of their twisted union severed. In the end, it was a woman's betrayal that was David's undoing. His ego, his arrogance, his need for control, it had all led him straight into Violet's vengeful snare. He had underestimated her, underestimated them all, and now, he would pay the ultimate price. As for Lara, she stood hollow and numb, watching her whole world reduced to ash and ruin. The man she had once loved, now a monster in manacles. Her marriage, just another casualty of his empire of deceit. And Alec. Alec reached for her hand, tentative, somber. It's over, he murmured. We did the right thing. We're free now. But as Lara looked into his eyes, those stormy eyes that had captivated her for so long, she realized with sinking certainty that they would never be free. Not really. The lies, the treachery, the scars, they would follow them forever. Stain every moment, a patina of shame. This was no happy ending. No redemptive new beginning, just the gutted remnants of 3 broken lives, fractured beyond repair. As the first sting of tears threatened at the corners of her eyes, Lara turned and walked away. From Alec, from the smoldering wreckage of her marriage, from her once glittering, now tarnished life. There was nothing left for her here. Just ghosts and regrets. It was time to salvage what was left of her shattered heart and start over. Maybe, someday, she would learn how to trust again. How to love purely, without deceit. But that day was not today. Today, there was just the long cold road ahead. And the knowledge that betrayal was a blade that cut both ways, with no victors. Only various shades of ruin. 1 year later, the sun-dappled waves of the Caribbean lapped gently against the shore of the tiny, unmarked island, kissing the powdery white sand. Lara sat on the weathered deck of the ramshackle beach bungalow, sipping a Corona and watching the azure horizon. It had been a year since her meticulously crafted house of cards had spectacularly collapsed. A year since her sham of a marriage had imploded in a blaze of betrayal and treachery. A year since she had last seen Alec, walking away from the smoldering ruins of their affair. In that year, Lara had systematically dismantled her life, piece by fractured piece. She had quietly resigned from Cygnus, liquidated her assets, sold the penthouse. And then, she had simply disappeared. Vanished into the ether like a wisp of smoke. Her destination had been this far-flung speck of an island, a place with no name, no extradition treaties, and more importantly, no memories. Here, she could be nobody. Not a ruthless corporate executive, not a scorned society wife, not an adulterous temptress. Just Lara, alone with the salt, the sand, and her sins. Of course, escaping her old life hadn't been quite that simple. There had been loose ends to tie up, amends to make and accounts to settle, and answers to uncover. In the smoldering aftermath of David's very public downfall and arrest, the whole sordid mess had unraveled with dizzying speed. His illicit financial empire, exposed in all its Ponzi scheming glory. The mistress, Violet, seeming like a canary to cut a deal. And Alec. Lara took a long pull of her beer, chasing away the sting of that particular memory. After the chaos had died down, once David had been trundled away to a maximum security prison to await a laundry list of federal charges, Lara had finally cornered Alec. She needed to know the truth, once and for all. Under the harsh fluorescence of the precinct hallway, Alec had finally cracked. The whole squalid story had come pouring out, in all its heart-wrenching detail. How he had known the depths of David's corruption almost from the start. How his affair with Lara had begun as a way to get closer, to gather intel and evidence on her husband's crimes. How he had never meant to fall in love with her, but how he couldn't deny what had grown between them, illicit and true. Most devastating of all had been Alec's final confession, his voice shaking with pent-up emotion. "My name isn't Alec Novak," he had choked out, his eyes pleading. "It's Special Agent Noah Kellerman. I work for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. David has been on our radar for years. I was sent in undercover to finally nail the bastard." Lara had stumbled back as if slapped, reeling and raw. It had all been a lie. Every touch, every whisper, every stolen moment. Alec, no, Noah, had played her, used her, just a pawn in his long game. Just like David. "I am sorry," he had whispered brokenly, reaching for her. "Lara, please. What I feel for you. That was never a lie. Don't she had spat, wrenching away, eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Don't you dare say it. You don't get to love me. Not after this." And then she was gone, a stranger in her own life, unmoored and adrift. She wandered in a fog, going through the motions of burning everything down. Cygnus, the penthouse, the last fraying threads of her former identity. None of it mattered anymore. She needed to escape, to start over, to outrun the hollow ache in her chest. Which had led her here, to the edge of the world, to numb the pain and lick her wounds in solitude. For a year, it had almost worked. The nightmares had receded. The rum-soaked evenings blurred into salt-kissed mornings until the days lost all meaning. She had almost convinced herself she could forget, move on, start anew. But then, the letter had arrived. An elegantly monogrammed envelope with an Atlanta postmark and no return address. Inside, a single sheet of heavyweight vellum with a simple message in an achingly familiar scrawl. "Lara. I respected your wishes. I stayed away, gave you space, let you heal. But it's been a year and I can't move on. I want not until I tell you face to face. It wasn't a lie. It has never been a lie. And it never will be. I'll wait for you, for as long as it takes. You know where. And now, here Lara sat, staring out at the endless cyan waves, at yet another crossroads. She could crumple the letter into the surf, let the tide take his words and wash her hands of it all for good. She could retreat into her lonely exile of sand and solitude and never look back. It would be easy, safe, but some small, stubborn part of her, the part that still ached for his touch, for the undeniable way she came alive in his presence, that part wouldn't let her take the easy way out. She had been running for so long, from David's betrayal, from Alec's, Noah's deceit, from her own sins. Maybe it was time to stop running. To turn and face the wreckage of her life head on. With a resolute sigh, Lara stood and brushed the sand from her cutoffs. She drained the last of her beer and crumpled the empty can and the letter in her fist. She had a plane to catch and her own amends to make. 12 hours and 2 layovers later, Lara found herself on a familiar doorstep, the hot Atlanta dusk heavy on her shoulders. The townhouse was just as she remembered, the wrought iron railings dripping with bougainvillea, the cheerful red door beckoning. Their secret bolt hole, where they had stolen so many perfect weekends, shut away from the world. Steeling herself, she raised a trembling fist and knocked. The door swung open almost instantly and there he was. Alec. Noah, her once lover and always betrayer. He looked older, wearier, but still so achingly beautiful, his eyes stormy with longing and regret. "You came," he said hoarsely, half statement, half prayer. "I didn't think you would. I almost didn't." Lara admitted, feeling a year's worth of hurt and anger bubbling up in her throat. "You lied to me, used me." "I know," Noah said solemnly, holding her gaze. "And I will spend the rest of my life regretting that, if you let me. But Lara, you have to know. Falling for you, loving you. That was the most honest thing I've ever done." Lara pressed her lips together, feeling the hot sting of tears. "I don't know if I can trust you again. Trust myself with you. We hurt each other so much." Noah reached for her then, slowly, carefully. This time she didn't pull away. "I am not asking for absolution," he murmured. "I know I have a long road ahead to earn that. But I am asking for a chance. To show you every day how much I love you. How much I always loved you." Lara closed her eyes, feeling the last walls around her heart crumble to dust. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe they were too broken to salvage. But as she fell into his arms, as his mouth found hers in a searing kiss, she knew one bone-deep truth. She would rather gamble on this imperfect love than face a lifetime without him. Their story had never been a fairy tale. There were no white knights or happily ever afters. Just two broken people, stumbling through the dark, drawn together like moths to a flame. But as they tangled together in that familiar bed, skin to skin and soul to soul, Lara felt something new bloom beneath her ribs. Not love, but the fragile seedling of hope. Maybe true love wasn't a lightning strike or a crashing wave. Maybe it was a garden you tended, with care and effort and patience. Maybe it was a choice you made, day after day. To forgive, to trust, to try. As Lara lost herself in Noah's touch, in his searching kisses and reverent caresses, she knew her choice was made. They would face the future together, with clear eyes and unburdened hearts. Build something real and strong and true from the rubble of their broken past. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be perfect. But it would be theirs. A love they had fought for, bled for, earned with the currency of sorrow and betrayal. And in the end, that's all Lara had ever wanted. A love that was hers, scars and all. Hesitant and healing and wholly imperfect. But more than enough to build on. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it and learned from it. I appreciate your likes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.